everyone. Thank you for joining me for the bonus week for the Patriotic Pears Stitch Along 2026. Last week I showed you how to finish our beautiful Patriotic Pears from Annie B's folk art that we stitched together and then completely finished. I wanted to share or give you guys a little thank you for participating in my SAL. So I designed this adorable postage stamp quilted pear that perfectly complements the Patriotic Pears using some of my favorite Tim Holtz fabrics, and I have a free template for how to put together this pear. It is very similar to our cross stitch pears. However, all three sides are pieced and quilted, and I also have a free download for a little cross stitch design that I used as a tag, but would also make an adorable label on project bags or all kinds of little things. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do for the bonus project is we're going to grab an assortment of red, white, and blue fabric. And I have grabbed an assortment of my favorite Tim Holtz fabrics, but you could very easily grab coordinating fabrics from the Independence collection that we used for the backing fabric if you have a fat quarter bundle or something like that. Or you can grab from your stash if you have stash drawers. I have scrap drawers. This is my scrap fabric from Tim Holtz. I didn't grab any yardage yet. I could if I need to, or fat quarters or whatever. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with all of my scraps. And normally, if you watched my postage stamp heart tutorial, I'm going to link it for you guys right here. If you watched that, I did strips, and then I sewed the strips together and cut them apart and sewed them together. For this, I wanted a little scrappier. If you want to make it easier, go ahead and do that strip technique from that tutorial. I do think you're going to need a bigger strip set than what was provided in that. I think that was a 9 or 9.5 inch square. I am simply going to piece together, and I am going to show you that, and I'll show you the exact measurement, how many 1.5 inch squares I'm going to end up using, how many rows we're going to sew together to get 3 panels, because I want each side of the pear to be the postage stamp and quilted. So let me go ahead and start cutting up my fabric. So I am just going to start anything I have like this that already is close to what I need. I am simply going to trim into 1.5 inch squares. And we're just going to clean this up. And I'm going to cut quite a few of them. If I have extra, that's great. And I want it, like I said, to be super scrappy. Now, my intention is to start with a bunch of Tim Holtz fabrics, but I may blend in some other things. I haven't really decided. I just knew I had a whole bunch in my Tim Holtz scrap bin, and I thought these would make a really wonderful little postage stamp scrappy quilted pear. So I'm going to continue cutting up all of these 1.5 inch squares, and I will meet you back here in a minute to show you how I'm going to line them up. And because they're 1.5-inch squares, that means they're only going to be 1 inch finished, so they're tiny. So even though this looks like it takes up a lot of room, I just want to show next to this how it's pretty small. So we're going to be able to get 3 sides of our pears, I believe, from this row once pieced together. So let's take all of these pieces over to the sewing machine and sew up our little patchwork. Okay, so when you're sewing all of these little teeny tiny squares, it can be a lot. I just find it's easier not to pin. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on here, and I like to chain piece. I'm using, I'm using a really short stitch length, like 1.3 to 1.5, probably here on my machine. Let me re-thread it really quick. And I do find the chain piecing is going to be the easiest because it's going to keep me having something here. It also helps my machine to stay threaded. So what we're going to do is I'm doing vertical rows, and then I sew the vertical rows together. Oh, that thread is kind of wonky. I got something weird going on here. Let's start over. All right, so we're going to do a couple of rows here. And I just constantly grab the little pears and put them together. And I'm going to continue this for all of them. It's probably the most amount of work of not doing those strip sets. However, like we mentioned when we were cutting up the fabric, this is going to give you a lot of versatility in your scrappiness. It's not going to have quite the pattern that the little postage stamp block does when you do the strip sets. But either way is going to be fine. And I kind of just continue to build my strip like this so that I can keep it in order the best I can. Okay, so I'm going to grab my next set so that I have another one in the machine, another strip coming, or started rather. And we're going to continue this until we have all of our strips, or all of our rows, pardon me, not our strips, our rows. It is being sewn into a strip, I suppose. But I do find that if you want things in a specific order, it's best to kind of work a little at a time. And not get too far ahead of your skis, if you will, and get them. I get them out of order. Other people might not. You can always take a photo too, if that will help you. Okay, so this one is done now, and we're going to take this over and iron it and add it to the rest of our or to the beginning of our strip. And what I do is I iron them one direction or another so that my seams nest together. And I'll show you that next. And then we're going to come back and we're going to speed stitch the rest of these rows. Okay, so my whole goal, I'm going to show you this. These are going this way, these are going this way, and these are going down. So on this one, we're going to iron them all down so that we can nest this one next. And I just try to keep it as straight as possible when ironing. I'm not going to go back and forth a whole lot or anything like that. So then when we put this strip next to this one, our seams should nest nicely, and I'll take this over and pin this and stitch this at the machine. Okay, so now I am going to set my seam like so, and I'm just going to go in here and press this to one side. And these little pieces, anytime you're working with little pieces, it can be a little bit of a trick, but I think this is going to be so stinking cute. All right, so here is my quilt sandwich panel. I wanted to just show I have a solid scrap here on the back, a lightweight batting in between, and then my patchwork pieced panel, which is, I want to say it is 17, no, it is 14 blocks long by 7 blocks high. And the reason I did this is I didn't want tons of excess. So we're going to make a full patchwork pear. Maybe could have got away with 6 blocks high, but for the sake of this, I think we're going to be glad that it's 7. And you're going to want to cut out the template. I cut mine out 3 times. You can use 1, but visually, I think it's a lot easier to see the placement. One of them will need to go upside down. It is not going to matter here for my pear, but I want all sides of this pear to be the patchwork. You could do 2 sides solid if you wanted to. So I'm going to set those aside. I did use some spray and bond basting adhesive to get these so that they are together really nicely. Just make sure they're nice and smoothed out. And then you can either use, if you have one of the foots on your machine, or you can draw lines. I'm going to draw lines because visually, for the sake of filming, I think that is a lot easier to see. But I want to do like a little patchwork quilting because I do want some quilting for my pear. I am going to use my air erasable marker again, and if you have followed me, you know my love of a good diagonal seam. So we are going to do that. I'm going to do small quilting. This is a small pear. I think it'll be nice and showy to have that nice, nice tiny quilting on here. You could do all one direction or another. You could go straight across if you wanted to. You could do cross hatch. That's what I'm going to do. That is my favorite. I don't always do that, but we're going to today. And we're just going to go in. I draw all my little lines here, and then I'm going to go over to the machine and quilt this, and I will time lapse it for you. I'm just going to do some nice straight line quilting. I also really love like a little zigzag. Don't really want to get my older machine, my Janome machine out today, but that might be something fun to look to do in the future. I don't think that was a very good line. There we go. And I think, especially for the sake of tutorial, if you do one line on your machine and then you simply line it up with a guide, or you have a foot guide or anything like that, you do not have to draw multiple. But I do think for the sake of the video tutorial and just visually, I'm a very visual person and I like to see it. I'm like, okay, do I like that? Because it is air erasable. You will notice that the original lines will start to lighten. You don't want to like draw your lines one evening and then think you can come back the next day. They're probably going to be gone. You can use a water erasable, but you will have to use water to get rid of it. I used to like to use that a lot. I do like the friction heat erasable ones, but again, I have had the best luck with this air erasable, but please use whatever you like the best. If you like to also draw your little lines on your piece for quilting. The other thing that I often will do is I will draw all the lines going one direction and I'll go quilt. And then I come back and I go do draw the other lines and going the other direction. And I will then quilt it going the other direction when I'm doing a crosshatch. If you're just going to do straight lines, that's awesome too. If you want to make more than one pair, you're going to want to make a bigger patchwork. I am only giving the instructions for one pair, so size up accordingly. You could make multiples if you wanted to, but I'm planning on styling mine with my Patriotic Pears. I don't need a whole bunch of these. This one's, obviously patchwork, it's busy. I think it's just a nice complement to the cross stitch pears. So that's why I'm only doing one of these for this. But obviously make some in Christmas print. You know those are coming, right? Or whatever you want to coordinate. So let's go over to the machine and do some quilting. So what we're going to do is now I want to double check that everything fits. And once I am happy with this, and this block is actually perfect sized for this particular pair, and this pair is around not quite 6 inches tall. The seam allowance is built in to this. This is not a giant pair. It's going to be pretty small little patchwork. And what we're going to do is we're going to trace around, we're going to position them on here, trace around them, and then cut them out with our scissors. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to mark the center on each of these like this. And we're also going to leave our bottom open. Let's fix the bottom of this one just a tad. Needs a little more rounding. There we go. Okay. And all I'm going to do is kind of mark along that straight edge, because that's where we're going to leave it open for turning. And we are going to stitch these together. We're going to pin and we're going to stitch from here to here and stop. And then we're going to put this piece in and stitch and stop. So let me take this over to the sewing machine and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so we're over at the sewing machine, and we are going to assemble these much like the cross stitch pears. So I'm going to sew from here to here using a 1/4 inch seam. They may not line up exact, but I promise in the end they're going to be fine. And I am a pinner, so I am going to use a 1/4 inch foot on my machine. And I'm going to make sure it's pinned. And I'm going to start up at the top and end down here at the bottom. And the best thing to do is to take it slow. So I'm going to put my needle down right at my mark. And we're going to go back to a shorter stitch length. This is pretty thick though. And I'm going to do a couple back stitches right there where I started. And we're going to ease it around all of the corners. This is inside the pear, so I'm not too concerned. And again, just ease it around. And when you get back or get down to the bottom to that other notch, then we're just going to make sure we back stitch that as well. All right, we're going to pull our pins. And when you open it up, look how cute. Look at that. Okay. I kind of try to almost flatten it. I think that makes it easier. And then we're going to take the next piece, the next side, and we're going to line up that notch right up here at the top. And I'm going to pin that in place. And we're going to pin this side in place now. Just like that. So now this side is pinned, and I'm going to start up here at the beginning again. So I'm going to need to kind of manipulate it under here. There is a lot of layers because of that quilting. So just take your time, and I'm going to make a couple little stitches and a couple little back stitches. And again, we're just going to sew another side of the another side of the pear. So sorry. I think I was thinking, what's wrong with my machine? And as always, it's not the machine, it's the person operating it. Okay. We're going to pull all of our pins. Oh, it's looking cute. Okay, so last side, just going to kind of pull all of that extra out of the way. And we're going to pin up this last side and stitch it. And then we can clip the corners and flip it out. I will tell you, I would very highly recommend with this much bulk, clipping your corners to get the curves to lay nicely. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of flatten her on out here. Get this underneath my machine. Put the needle down. And we're just going to back stitch a couple right at the beginning, and we're going to start easing it around this side. Now, before I clip anything, I am going to check really quick that my top of my pear looks good. So I'm just going to kind of push that. And we do look good. It looks good. So I am now going to, we'll go over to the other camera. I'm going to kind of trim a little bit of this away. Okay, so I am just going to trim my seam allowance a bit to reduce the bulk. And I'm going to kind of go around here, each of these sides a bit, probably trim it down to about more like 1/8 of an inch. And as I get down here to the bottom, I'm just going to kind of leave that. But I think this is going to allow us to turn this a little bit easier. And I'm going to see if I can maybe get away without clipping those corners. I might want to flip it back and trim them, but I think just reducing the bulk might be all that is needed. We're just going to push out our little corners like so. Yeah, I actually don't think, I think just reducing the bulk in the seams is going to be all that we need for this. But if you want, clip your corners. Look how cute she is. Oh my word. I am a little bit obsessed. How cute is this? All right. So now that we have our little quilted pear, just going to kind of make sure. You could get a point turner out. I'm being lazy. Just going to use my pen here up at the top of my pear to just kind of push that seam out, if you will. There we go. All right, so the bottom of this is going to look very much like the cross-stitch pears. If you watched that video, we are going to cover this also. I am going to be using wool felt, not felted wool, for demonstration because I'm going to show you a die-cut leaf or two attached to the top of this little cutie. All right, let me grab the filling, and we are going to stuff this with a combination of wool roving and crushed walnut shells to give it that great weight. Okay, so one major difference between the cross-stitch pears and this one is I am going to use some of my felt stitch and create dies for spellbinders for my leaves. And we're going to need a total of 4 because we're going to sew 2 together and we're going to die cut them and add stitching details. And I'll stitch them here in a minute. I am going to need a bottom piece and a stem, which we will do here in just a second. Okay. And I have templates for those as well. Now, if you don't have a die cut machine, I also will have a template for a leaf, or you can use a template from the cross stitch chart if you want to, and finish your pear very much like a cross stitch one. I just trimmed out a little bit of my wool felt here. Now, the difference between this and the felted wool is felted wool, you cannot die cut. It will shred. So you're going to want to use wool felt. I prefer 100% wool felt or the wool felt blends from Benzie Design or Spellbinders for mine. So I'm going to cut out a total of 4. The introduction to felt stitching and some tips and tricks are coming. This is just a very small little tutorial here in this video. I have a piece of felt. I am using the sandwich for my die cut machine to cut anything. This is the same kind of die you'd use to cut paper. These have stitching holes in them made specifically for felt. So for my machine, I've got my platform base, my platform top, one cutting plate, my the felt, or if you're going to do paper, that is right here. Then you put your die face down. So the cutting area goes right down on top of that. And then you finish with your second cutting plate. Then all you do is crank this through your machine to cut your leaf, just like this. And then that is all the die cutting we're going to do. But I do think it gives you a really cool result, so I wanted to share that idea. Also could be used for your cross stitch pairs. So we've got 2 leaves, 4 pieces, because we're going to sew 2 leaves together to form 1 leaf, 2 leaves together to form 1 leaf, and then we're going to pop them up here at the top of our pear. So just going to set that aside for just a minute. For this step, to get the bottom, don't look at these leaves. These are the incorrect ones. The template that you'll download have these are just sized a little too big. But this has our bottom piece and our stem. These are the 2 we're going to do because I'm not doing the leaves. If you are going to cut out your leaves, then you would do this step next. We're going to use a freezer paper hack, and I'm actually going to just pull out a little bit here. I don't need a very big piece, so I'm just going to cut it off so I don't have a ton of waste. And you could also just trace around it if you wanted to. I find that I like to do my templates this way. Oh, I maybe almost didn't get a big enough piece, but I think we're going to be fine. So I'm going to take my pen and I am going to trace around on the not shiny side, whoops, of my freezer paper. Now, what you're going to notice here that is different than my pears, the cross stitch pears, pardon me, is I did the stem, the bottom, and the leaves all out of the same color of wool. I'm going to use a couple of colors for my fabric pear. So I have got my pear here. I die cut my leaves from a cream color. I think this is called linen. I'll have the exact one linked below. For my stem, we're going to just do kind of this very light beigey brown. It's not, well, when I lay it on here, you can see the color difference. You could also pick any of the colors from here, or you could do a traditional green if you wanted to. So I have quite a lot of this color because I do use it a lot. And I do not want to waste a bunch of this. So what we're going to do, so I'm just going to trim away a lot of this excess. But if you wanted to, you could simply cut out your template and trace around it and cut around it. I like the freezer paper method. I feel like it gives you much more accurate results. So I've just cut around my felt, and we're going to iron this to here and then cut around it. Okay, so I think my video camera totally went off on this. What I did was I ironed the freezer paper, and I want to show you that you can reuse your freezer paper. This actually is not a terrible thing that my video camera went off, but your freezer paper is reusable. Let's say you're making a couple of these. Maybe you're making, one for your sister or your mom, or you want it more than one, whatever. So what you'll do is you'll iron it. I had it all in that one piece there, and you'll iron it in place. And the great thing is it's not going to go anywhere. Then you simply cut it out. Well, then when you're done, you can peel it off just like this, and it comes right off. And you are left with your piece that we're going to use to build our stem and the base of our pear. But as you'll notice, I took that kind of shinier side. There's the papery side that we drew on and the shinier side. You can iron it back in place if you need to, or on another piece of felt. See, it's already attached again to my felt. And you can cut out as many of these as you need, which is super handy because you can get several uses out of one little template. Okay, time to stuff our pear. So I like to use a bowl to hold it in place. I also pulled out my stuffing tool from Benzie Design. I often forget that I like to use this. I like to use wool roving, so I've got my wool roving here. And I also have some ground walnut shells. If you have a funnel, this would be a great time to grab that to use it. But we're going to start with our wool roving. And if you want, you can also use polyester fiber fill. There we go. And stuff. So I'm going to loft it like so. And we're going to shove this kind of down into the tip of our pear. And I like to stuff my pear a good half full before I even start thinking about using crushed walnut shells. All right, just gonna kind of push pretty hard in here, pushing that down into this tip. Oh my gosh, look how cute. And we're going to, I'm just gonna use my fingers to kind of make a little well. And I'm gonna stick my funnel in here with my ground walnut shells. Okay, so I've got my funnel. I don't measure these out, but I would say it's like 1/3 of a cup, maybe more. You can add it, you could stuff the whole thing with the walnut shells if you wanted to, or your filling of choice. This gives it some wonderful weight though, and it helps your stuffed pieces stand up. I like to work in a small bowl. It catches any stray things, and it also helps you hold your stuffy project up without it tipping over and dumping everywhere. I also sometimes will put like a jelly roll pan or cookie sheet underneath to catch any stray flakes, but we're going to live dangerous today. And then we're going to loft more of our filling product, whether it's wool roving or polyester fiber fill, and that's going to be on the bottom, kind of to hold those walnut shells in place. I try to tuck it underneath the edge, and then we're just going to kind of go like that. And I'm going to feel it. It definitely could use a little bit more. Okay, so now I like to pin my base in place. So I'm going to line up that back one, and I'm going to kind of fold this till you get it kind of where you want. We're going to pin that, and then we're going to pin kind of out here to each side. I kind of like to bring that corner, line that up, and then we're folding in our pear bottom, our layers. Okay, there is our pear base, And now we're going to load up a needle and we are going to whip stitch this in place along the bottom of our pear. Okay, so then I like to use about 2 strands for this step. So I'm going to grab, I'm just using, gosh, this is on an old floss strap, 3864. And I'm going to use a nice sharp tip embroidery needle for this. So, because we need to pierce through the fabric, we're not cross stitching. And I'm just going to go around here, pull that down until we get a nice little knot. And we're going to snip any of that excess off, okay? And I'm going to come up underneath and I'm just going to kind of catch right along the edge of my base here. And we're going to, wherever I come up, just pull in my knot underneath. I am going to go straight into my wool, but then kind of come down and diagonal so that it gives me this little straight stitch all the way around the perimeter of my base. And I try to go fairly even. It's not always super successful. I wasn't very successful right there. But again, this is where having that little bowl to kind of help hold in place is super helpful. And I'm pulling my pins as I go around so I don't have to worry about those. This is going to be what our pear is sitting on. So don't get too caught up in having to be super perfect or anything like that. Okay, when we get back to kind of where we started there, I am going to put my stitches through my quilted material. That was kind of a big one. Hold on. Okay, we're going to take a much smaller little bite here. And then leaving that little loop there, I'm going to go through it once. We're going to go through it twice. We're going to pull nice and tight. I'm going to run my needle kind of underneath and up through that bottom and just snip. And there is our little quilted pear base. So cute. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, I'm actually just going to get a couple new strands of floss so that they're plenty long enough. I'm going to take, I think 2 strands is going to be, nope, I lied. I'm going to take 3 strands of floss to stitch my leaves. It's the first thing we're going to do. And we're going to use this same nice kind of beigey neutral color. I am using 3864 And I'm just going to leave the ends loose for now. So I'm going to take 2 of my leaves, and I have them pinched together here, and in between I'm going to start down here at the bottom base of my leaf, and I'm going to leave a little tail. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to go up and down every other stitching hole first before we do the veining in our leaves. So just kind of holding those ends out of the way while we stitch. And the reason I stitch this way instead of like a traditional back stitch is if you did a back stitch, it will not look good on the other side. And our goal here is I don't want it to look funky. So I am going to go up and down. And when we get to the end, we're going to reverse that. However, so we've gotten to the end going straight, we're going to reverse it. So we're just going to come back. But as we get to those veinings that go out to each side, we are going to start going to the side. So right there, I'm going to go out to the right first. You could also go to the left, and we're going to go up, down every other again, and then reverse it back to the center. So now we're up and down. We're coming right back to where we, split off there at the side. Let me pull that back. So sorry, I dropped it. And we're going to go up and down each stitching hole, just like this. And right back into that center line. And then we're going to continue up and down until the next one. So see how that's going to fill on the back side? And it looks just as neat on this side, minus my little felt that needed popped out there, as it does on the front. So again, come right down to where it splits off. And we're going to go up and down those stitching holes. And I've left this little tail for a reason. I'm going to try to hold it out of the way with my hand as we're doing the veining in our leaves. And then back to the center again. And then we're splitting out to the other side. Always making sure that we just are keeping our stitches so that it looks as nice on one side as the other. How cute is this going to be on our pear? Okay, and then we're coming up in that same one and then down, filling in. And now we're back to where it splits off. And we're going to do that last veining in our leaf. And I am going to repeat this entire thing for the second leaf before we stitch up our stem and add our embellishing. The stitching holes make it so nice to follow the perfect little guideline here. Okay, so we started in between the 2 layers of the leaf so that when we tie this off, so I've got one last stitch. You can see on the front it's finished because we came up in between. On the back, we need to then come out in between the two layers, just like this. So now it looks the same on the back as it does on the front. Our two ends are in between the two layers of the leaf, and I am going to simply tie this into a little knot, gentle. So just like this, we're going to just kind of double knot, pull tight, and that's going to hide the knot between those two layers, and then I'm just going to snip that off. You can kind of tuck those little ends in there. Look at that. And I'm just going to pin this guy kind of where I think I want it. Look how cute that's going to be. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me do the same thing for the second leaf. Okay, stem. I actually have found it's easy if you've got some little reversey tweezers to roll this up nice and tight. Then you can pull it out, and you can even use them as like another set of hands, which I thought was nice. I'm going to take my knotted thread, and I'm going to kind of come in here in the through the center to hide that knot, and we're just going to whip stitch our stem closed. Try to do some nice even little stitches, kind of like so. Okay. And then when I get down here to the bottom, pull that a little tighter. I am just going to make a little stitch, leaving that little loop, and we're going to go through one direction. We're going to go through once. We're going to go through the same direction twice. We're going to pull that nice and tight. And I'm actually going to leave that on there for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of bring my knot underneath where one of the leaves is laying, but take my needle and thread through my pear. And then I'm just going to kind of do a little tacking stitch. So I'm going to take it through my leaf, and then I'm going to push it back through my pear. And we're going to do that again. This time I think I'm catching both. I decided to do my leaves both on one side for this one. Now, my stem. We are going to figure out where we want that. And I do like to pin mine in place. And I have positioned it slightly off center just because of the placement of the leaves and things. I think that's super cute. Kind of digging that. And I have my thread still in this. You could have knotted up another piece. And what we're going to do is we are going to go down near the base, and we're going to tack this into place. So I'm going into the base of my stem, and right there through my pear, I am going to do a nice little pull. Going to go back into the base of my pear, kind of lift up that leaf a little bit. Make sure that I'm catching, that is super tight. I'm catching the top of my pear with my tacking stitches. And we're going to do that again. We're going to do a couple more of these. Just kind of taking our time, getting it exactly how we want it to look. I think I can probably pull my pins out now. That'll especially show me if I'm need to add anything else. Okay, so I'm going to go in my base here, and I'm going to kind of try to go down through that leaf and underneath into the top of my pear. Kind of, see that? Guess what else I need tweezers for? Working through all of that seam allowance. All right. And when I am happy with this, I think what I'm going to do, let me grab a little bit of pear. I'm going to go up through my leaves. I'm going to catch the base of my pear, or the stem, pardon me. Yes, it is the pear, but the stem. And I'm going to come out right here. And we are going to then just take a tiny little stitch so we can make a little loop. So I've got my little loop here. I'm going to go through once. I'm going to go through twice. I'm going to pull nice and tight. And then I'm going to take my needle right where I was before, and I'm just going to push it down and out the side wherever it kind of naturally will go. And we're going to snip the end. Right, friends. Oh my gosh, look how cute this is. I'm kind of obsessed with these leaves. I kind of want to go do this for, go back and redo some of my leaves. I love that. And okay, so the next thing we want to do is on my blog sidebar, I have a chart for this little teeny tiny tag. Ignore this. I had to resize it a couple times because that first one was way too big. But this is made, we're going to make it into a little tag that we can hang onto our pear, or anything else that you want to. Maybe you just want it for a little label on something or whatever. So I am going to take a scrap of batting and a scrap of Tim Holtz fabric here. I'm just going to use this one. And I'm going to layer these pieces. I'm going to trim this up actually a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to take this over to the iron first. But what I'm going to do, this is going to be a very primitive type tag. I'm not going to turn the ends under. For this, if you wanted to, you totally could. But I am going to sew around the perimeter of this, and then the edges are going to be very frayed. And I'm going to use my sewing machine to do that. I probably will draw a little line, but I kind of think I'm going to sew around it a couple of times to make it kind of wonky-ish, if you will. I don't want it super wonky, but you'll see what I mean. So let me iron this, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine and sew around it. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I am going to go probably about 1/8 of an, yeah, I like about 1/8 of an inch away when I'm sewing on like any kind of a tag. And this is just going to serve as a visual representation of where I'm sewing. So I'm going to go all the way around here with my air erasable marker, my air erasable pen, and add in that little guideline so that visually I can kind of see where I'm going. I'm also going to cut away all of this extra. There we go. So here's what it looks like right now. And I'm going to put a little rivet in my tag. It's just going to be a square tag. I didn't do like notch corners. I just wanted a little square. It's almost like a little label. And we are going to switch out our foot because I have my 1/4 inch foot on right now and I just need my regular. Let's just put that on there. Give it a little tighten. Okay. And I am going to just start anywhere really. And I'm going to increase my stitch length to about 2.5 or so. And we're going to sew. Oh, I don't think that's quite 1/8 of an inch, but that's okay. And the first timer, I'm going to go around this 3 times because as I mentioned, I do want it kind of wonky. I'm not worried quite as much about being super precise. Oops. And I totally overshot my corner there. That's okay. Okay, and now I don't really want to go too much outside that, but I do want to kind of almost be a little wonky with my stitching. Oops, maybe one more. And then when we get back to kind of where we started, I'm just going to do a couple back stitch and call it good. Okay, so here is our little tag now, all stitched up. And I'm going to take this over to my cutting mat and we're going to trim this up and finish it into a little tag that we can then hang on our pear or whatever we want. You can hang it on a project bag if you wanted to. So outside of my sewing now, so I'm actually going to take my 1/4 inch line, whoops, I'm going to take my 1/4 inch line just to the inside of my stitched line now, and just make sure that you're not going to cut through any of your stitches. And we're going to clean up the edges. So again, I'm going to go about 1/4 inch, my 1/4 inch is lined up just to the inside, on the inside part of the tag, as long as I'm not cutting through any of my stitches. Same thing over here. Just kind of squaring it up. And now if you want to rough up the edges, I kind of like my edges like this when I haven't turned them in, slightly frayed up. If you gently rub your scissors along here, you can fray up your tag just a little bit because we've got that nice little layer of batting. I used a nice lightweight batting in between. And I'm just going to kind of rough these up a little bit. And if you get super long threads that won't easily pull out, I'll just snip those because I don't want them looking that jaggedy. But that looks really cute. And sewing around it multiple times also gives it this nice little frayed up tag look that I'm going for. So I'm just going to actually take my scissors and we're going to snip away all those little extra pieces. And I'm just going to kind of go around and pull again, see if I've missed any. I like them to be rough, but I don't want them having long strings. And there's our cute little tag. Okay, now we're going to punch a hole in it. Okay, so I do have these eyelets here that I think I want to use. And I am going to make a mark where I want to have that hole punched. And I'm going to use a crocodile. If you have another punch, you can totally use that. But I am going to use this. I'm going to start with a smaller hole than I think I need. On paper, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but on this, I'm going to. Because the fabric will have a little give. So I'm going to, got my hole. This is where my paper crafting tools, I know eyelet tools are not necessarily paper crafting. We kind of co-opted them. So I've put it through here. And then this is the eyelet setter. So I am going to pop it in and give it a good squeeze. And I think it needs a little bit more. Okay, so you might have to tap that down in place a little bit. I will say that my old tools from making memories comes in super handy with eyelets. I think I got that one. I'm just gonna give it a nice little tap. Make sure that none of those sharp edges are poking up. Look at my little tag. Oh, she's cute. And we're going to make a 1.5 inch, at least double, maybe triple loop bow to put on here. Let's start with a double. So with the bow tool, I hold it out. I'm right-handed, so I hold mine like this, but I'm just going to hold the end over the tongs of our bow making tool fork. And I'm going to wrap around, and you're going to make figure 8. So up, so we start on top. We're going to go around, between, up and over. See that 8 that we just made? And if you were making a single, you would stop here. But I'm going to go in between, up, over, in between, up, over. We're going to make a triple loop. In between, up, over, and now there's 3 loops on this side, 3 loops on this side, and here is the end of our ribbon. I'm going to finish in between. I've got my tail here, and we're going to wrap that around and leave that little loop right there, and we're going to take our ribbon in between those 2, and we're going to pull taut like this. And this is the beauty of that silk ribbon. Look at that little teeny tiny knot. I love it so much. We're going to pull that other tail down to the back. I find that works the best. That kind of helps them lay the way I want them to. And when I am happy with the placement of my knot and my loops, we're going to slide it off of our tool, and I'm going to fluff out the loops in my bow, just like this. And what I like to do is I like to take my stick pin, whether you're using like just another Button Company pin or whatever, but this is also a pin, and I am going to carefully manipulate this through my bow. Sometimes if you try to go in a little more at an angle and not right through the exact center, there we go. So now we have this little pin with our sweet little loops on it. Maybe you wanted to stamp a little tag, or you have a little label or something you want to put in here, because you can slide a little piece of paper in here if you want. And then I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to leave these kind of long to begin with, and I'm going to trim those up. If I want to trim them some more, I can. And I did slide that little charm on. I'm going to see if I kind of do think I like it. And now I'm going to go back in, kind of stick my little pin in here underneath my leaf just a bit. Going to kind of fluff her out, all of that good stuff. And now we have a beautifully adorned little tag embellishment. Now, if you want this to hang down a little bit, I would put a little twine through that and hang it on here. Maybe I'll do that. Let's try that and see if I like it better, shall we? Okay, I'm going to cut a length. I'm going to fold this in half. But I want to show kind of how you can play around with it and get the look you want. So doubled that, went through the loop. Then I'm just going to pull these apart. And on one of these, we are going to thread our little charm on it. All of this is completely optional. Look in your stash. All of these things were in my stash too, by the way. I just kind of played around with it. So I'm going to have that little charm hanging on here. Now I'm going to double these up and knot it. And I am going to not leave this very long because I don't want it hanging down super far. And then we're going to snip those ends. And we're going to go through that little teeny tiny loop in there and put this in our pear. So here is our beautiful little pear, just like this. And of course, completely optional, you could stick pins. You can stick pins in any of your pears if you wanted to. Like if you wanted to put some little sewing pins or something in there, or decorative pins like from just another button company, just have fun with it. So that is, I'm going to kind of, again, I like to fiddle with it, get it just the way I want. That is going to be our adorable little pear finish here. And I guess I kind of matched today. So that is my bonus project for you guys. I hope you have enjoyed the video tutorial. If you have any questions, please drop them down below. Happy to help you guys, but there is a free PDF for this and a free PDF for making your own little postage stamp quilted pear. Thank you guys so much for watching.